My name's Amanda Daley. I'm a mixed media and textile artist based in Rotherham, and I'm here today to talk about the Threads That Connect Us project that's coming to Rotherham. Right, so let's have a look what's in the pack. So the pack that you will have received for this tutorial is going to cover machine applique and also some embroidery techniques. So first of all, we'll have a look in the pack and we'll take it step by step, and we'll go through the applique bit first, and then towards the end of the tutorial we'll cover a couple of basic embroidery stitches. But this pack is designed, it's up to you, what your creativity, what you want to do with it, whether it is applique, whether it is embroidery. You might even want to do something completely different. That's entirely up to you. So in the pack you will receive 2 pieces of calico. Now this is pre-washed, which means that it should be minimal fraying on the edges. But in a short while, when we do go to the tutorial, I'll give you a couple of tips of how you can minimise any fraying anyway. So as I say, there's 2 pieces of that will be in the pack. There is a piece of wadding, which is a sandwich for your quilt. Now the calico and your wadding are the main bits to create your pieces, and we are looking for your pieces to be 30 centimetres across or 12 inches. So I tend to work in centimetres, but I know a lot of people visualise in inches. And luckily, I got a calendar that was 12 by 12 and it's perfect for the squares there. So you will notice that you've got an allowance either side. So there's an inch allowance for when we put the piece into another piece of work. I'll cover that in a little bit more detail later on in the tutorial. So you've got your wadding, your calico. There's a piece of bonder web, and again this is for applique, and I will go through that in the tutorial. It's wonderful stuff, and it's really good to create some good pieces. You will get a reel of thread, you'll get some embroidery threads, and again I will show you through that later. And then you've got a selection of fabrics. Now your fabrics may be different. The reason that I've got these style of fabrics is because it links into the piece that I'm going to be illustrating applique shortly. So as I say, it could be random. You don't have to use the fabrics that are in your pack. It's just there to give you a little bit of inspiration. If need be, you can do entirely what you want. And then we have a few clips. So when we go back later to put the wadding, the calico together, these clips will help us do that, and you'll see that in the tutorial. Right, I mentioned what you get in your pack is a couple of pieces of calico, so you can see those here. I'm just going to give you a couple of tips how to minimise fraying, and also how to help centralising your design. So on this piece here, you can see that I've just gone round on my sewing machine doing a zigzag stitch. Dead simple, it doesn't have to be neat, it just helps minimise fraying when you're working, because the more you work on the fabric, then possibly the more fraying that you may get. Don't worry if you're going to hand sew and you haven't got a sewing machine, this is a brilliant tip to stop fraying. So you know the pieces, the decorating tape, the paper that you use around windows and to mask and everything, you can actually use this to stop fraying. And again, it doesn't have to be neat and perfect. So on this piece here, I've got what we call a selvage edge, which isn't going to fray. And you can see there that there's just a tiny bit, and that's where I cut this piece yesterday. So all you do is go around halfway like that and fold it over. I've worked with pieces and embroidered pieces like this, and it really does work. Now and again you just might have to replace a piece as you go through your work, and as I say, it doesn't have to be neat because this is the main bit that we're going to be working on. So you can just go around. And just for the sake of this tutorial, probably would do that a little bit neater, just there, but just go around and then you can work with that and that will minimise fraying, and when you've finished you just take the tape off and it's done. Another good tip for preparing your work is to think about, because we've only got a 12-inch piece and you need to start centralising your design. So what I normally do is halfway across two edges, just put a safety pin in there, so I know that down that line and down that line, that's the central part of my design. And when I start putting my fabrics and applique on, I can work out from the centres so the design is as central as possible. Okay, so we'll move on to starting the applique process in the tutorial then. Right, moving on to the design part of your project. So you can see I've got the two pieces of calico from the pack. I've got this piece that I started with, and this is the template to get to the design here. So these letters, they're not bought from anywhere, they're just what I've done on my computer, printed out, just done a normal slogan and just made the font really big, and then you can cut the letters out and use them as a template. So there's no fancy things that you need there. You could even hand draw them, cut them out yourself, use stencils. One thing just to remember, if you could use the calico for the backing, and I will come back to that later on in the tutorial when we get further along. So these are my letters, and these are the fabrics that I've chosen for my letters for the slogan. Now to get here, so if we see here, I've got this one. It's already got some of the backing on. So what you do, the bonder web that's in your pack, you get a piece of fabric, and I actually like to centralise and look what design I'm going to get in my fabric, because I want to make the most of the design that's on here. And this is a great way as well of using up scraps of fabric. So I really want to get the skull in here like that. So if you look there, that's more or less there. So I'm getting some image there onto my letter and what I want to portray. So all I would do now is with the bonder web, place it on like that, and then just cut the excess fabric off. So we'll move on to the next section shortly. So all I've done is lined up there what I want to use with my template, and I will show you on the next section how we get from that to that. Right, now the exciting bit, we're going to start constructing our design. So if you remember, we'd got to the part where I'd cut out a little bonder web. I've picked where I want the main bit of this design in the fabric to be on my letter. So I'm just going to show you how we attach the fabric to the bonder web. So a couple of pins to attach your template. Now again, I said before, you know, my design is letters. You can use whatever you want. You can construct a picture. So using scissors, not your good fabric scissors, these are old scissors, because you are actually cutting a little bit of paper as well. So we all know it's sacrilege to use fabric scissors on anything but fabric. I'm just quickly cutting off some of the excess fabric there. And then I'm just going to quickly iron that on there. So just take your iron, quickly iron it on. Just make sure that none of the upside is leaking out on the edges, because it may stick to the bottom of the iron. But it hasn't. This has worked well. So my tea's back on my fabric, and I'm going to quickly cook the tea out. And again, when we're doing applique, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not saying that this is the only way that you can do it. This is the way that I do it. It works for me. I don't need a fancy sewing machine. You can do this by hand, or you can just use basic stitches on your sewing machine. So there we have a T, and it's like the T on my original design. So let's get on now to getting the rest of the design onto the fabric, and then we can get on to the really exciting bit of doing the sewing. Right, moving on to assembling my letters, my applique letters onto the calico. This is where the tip I came in about just doing a central position of your safety pins is going to help. So I'm going to start with the 3-letter word, and I'm going to start with the middle of that letter there, and it's going to be ready to be positioned on there, in the middle there. So the Bonder web, it's a double-sided sticky agent, and in order to position it on the fabric, we just need to peel away the backing. So if I do the first 3 letters first, show you how that's done. So it's just a case of peeling off. You've still got a backing there, and that's the magic bit where it will stick to the fabric. So remember what I said, I'm using the middle bit of that letter A there, and that A is the starting point. I normally do this by eye, but an important part is just to get a piece of paper or anything just to check that it is all level. So my starting point is the A, and then I'm just leveling those 3 up. Now from here they look equal, the level, and I'm ready to iron, and there's no turning back from this bit. So here we go, I've just got a pressing cloth and just iron. And the letters are on. They're stuck on there. And what I'm going to move on to now is I'm going to continue doing the rest of the letters, and then we're going to just do a bit of sewing, because then that defines the letters and it really makes the fabric pop out as well, and also it gives extra stabilisation to keep them on the fabric. Right, we're on to the sewing bit. This is the bit I love. The letters on your applique is stuck onto the calico with the Bonder web, but I like doing the sewing part because it really makes the letters pop out and adds a little bit something to the design. I've got this on a basic running stitch, and I'm going to sew around each letter a couple of times, and I like that effect that it brings. It looks a bit sort of drawing scribbly type thing, but you'll see as we go along. So it's just basic running stitch, there's no special feet or anything, and it's just a case of manipulating your fabric. So I've got to an end of piece fabric, lift it up, go around. As I've said before, this isn't, I'm not saying that this is the only way to do applique, it's the way that I like doing it. You might want to hand sew, which is perfectly fine. And once you get used to your letter and your machine, then you can speed up. So I'm already starting to get a bit of definition now on my letter. It doesn't have to be perfect. And that's the effect that I quite like with my work. I'll just finish this letter E. It doesn't even matter if you overlap and go onto the calico. Again, when you're going round a couple of times, it gives a really nice finish. A different finish, I should say. Right, so I'm on my second way around this letter. The straight one's actually quite easy to do this way. So just take it slowly at first until you get used to it, and then have a bit of fun. Now remember, as I said, there's no right or wrong way with your designs. It's all about what you feel, what you want to express, what message you want to get across. And at the end of the tutorial, I will give you a couple of examples or other bits and pieces that I've done that might give you some further inspiration. So I'm working with black thread here. You might want to use different colours around your letters or your picture or your design. That's perfectly fine. And I've got towards the second bit around the letter, so I'm just going to quickly finish off by doing a little bit of a reverse forward and reverse stitch. Again, if I was probably making a garment, I would finish this off properly, but this is a design piece, it's an art textile piece. I've snipped off at the back, so we've got a letter E now stuck on. And this is another reason that I like sewing, because sewing these appliques on, because as you work in the material, one can get loose like that one. So I'm just going to pop a pin in that one just to keep it there. The rest of it's stuck on, it's just that. And then we're going to work through going twice round each letter. So I've got two letters here that have got three letters that have got middles, so you've got another little bit to do in the middle of those letters, but you can see there how that pops even though it's black on black and white around the letters. So I'm going to move on and do the rest of it. Right, we're going to move on to putting the backing on, the wadding and the other piece of calico, and to give this piece its quilted effect. So I have here the other piece of calico from the pack. Now I know I've said before you can use your own fabric and everything, but it would be useful if you did use at least one piece of the calico for your backing. For the front part, it doesn't matter what you use, as long as your dimensions again are the 12 by 12 or 30 centimetres by 30 centimetres. So you can see here we've got a bit of a sandwich, and just try to line it up as best you can. Things do get distorted as you sew, so that's pretty flat. I'm quite happy with that. And using the clips from your pack, then if you put those together, so you can see there that we're getting the sandwich. And again, this is the way that I do it for my piece of work. I've not been taught quilting professionally, and I'm sure that there are and maybe other ways and simpler ways of doing that. So I've just run out of a couple of clips. I'm going to use safety pins. So on this bit, if you haven't got enough of these clips in your pack, you can use safety pins, you can use the bulldog clips, you can use paper clips. You can even use pins, but they may again come out as you're sewing. So what I'm actually going to do here is just sew around the letters once, and then that will give us a quilting effect. I'm not going to sew around the edges on my piece at the moment, but I'm just going to sew around the letters, and then that will sandwich the pieces together. So I'm going to start again with the letter E, And again, this isn't a fancy quilting machine, there's no quilting foot, I'm just using an ordinary machine running stitch. You could use here, if you wanted, you could use the same colour cotton as your background. Again, I'm going to use the black just to enhance my letters popping out again. So if I just start off, and it's just right on the outside, and when I've done the letter E, I will show you what it looks like behind. I mean, I've got quite used to this technique now, but you just may need to do a little test to square, just on your tension, but mine's perfectly fine. And this principle as well can be used for hand sewing. So if I was to do this hand sewing, I'd just do either a simple running stitch or back stitch round each letter. And when I get to the embroidery part of the tutorial, I will show you back stitch. But I'm sure that'll be teaching you all to suck eggs. Back stitch and running stitch are just a staple of sewing. Right, just cutting in now to the last letter on my piece, so you can see how it's progressed, how the letters are really popping out, and we've got this lovely quilting effect. I love it when that piece starts coming together. So now the final letter T. Move my pin cushion out of the way. Right, so that's the letter T. It's finally finished. So you can see around some of the letters, it's not perfect, it's overrun a little bit. But as I say, that's the style that I like. I do like that fanzine sort of look of the letters. So I'm really pleased with how this has turned out. So now we can unpin it. Now, this is now ready to go into the bigger piece. So when you get to this stage, I mean, you know, you might want to add some more embellishments, you might need to do some more work, but when it's at the stage that you're ready, you're happy with your piece and you're ready to send it back to Flux in the box, please leave your edges unfinished. Leave the allowance on, because when we construct the quilt at the end of this, which I think will be in April and May this year, then that gives us some allowance when we're putting the binding in and aligning it with other bits and pieces. And I think if you watch the space on the Flux website, there may be opportunities when we're constructing these quilts if you want to get involved and come and help put them together as bigger pieces. So I look forward to seeing your output. Just to recap, this isn't right or wrong way to do this. This is the way that I like to do it. You can do your own way. You can do pictures, you can do letters, whatever you want. We really want to see your creativity, your passion, and getting your message across. It's about the art piece itself, not necessarily a sewing masterpiece. So I hope you enjoy creating your pieces, and we look forward to seeing those later this year.